please come into my room.
Hi, I'm David Ben, and this is the MUstaSH Room. Welcome back. I want to remind you guys our website is up at MUstaSHRoom.com. That's MUstaSH. And on social media at MUstaSH Room. I want to give a shout out to our only official sponsor, MUstaSH Brands. Yes, there is some lineage there. They're good people. On this episode, we have a good friend of mine, longstanding friend, Law. He's a stand-up comedian, business consultant, and one of the real OGs of podcasting. Kind of taught me the ropes when I first started. He talks about how he uses mushrooms to kind of reset his sleep and improve the quality of his overall sleep. Pretty interesting. He's a really, really fun guy. We also hear back from Chris. He talks about his heroic dose and how he prepared his mindset and his setting for the experience, and kind of gives us a rundown and what his takeaways were. Wifey Jill returns to talk about the mitaki mushroom, and we just have some fun. So thank you for being here, and enjoy. Have you ever played the dreidel game?
Yeah, a long time ago.
I mean, you've spun the dreidel, but do you actually know like how to collect gelt and like all the ins and outs of the game strategically?
No, that's where I become a Presbyterian again.
I don't either, man. Like I bailed at. I have to do more than spin this thing. Fuck that. Plus, I'm not much of a gambler. And I don't like to gamble with Jews, especially because it gets really frugal and weird.
I watched Uncut Gems. I get it.
Dude, it's good to see you, man. It's been a while. Like,
good to see you.
Since I've seen your face. It's been a long time.
Where are you, in a bunker?
Yeah, I mean, I could have put the green screen up and tried to fool you, but no, I'm in an unfinished basement. This is the MUstaSH Room is mostly just the corner of my unfinished basement, adjacent to a bunch of monotubs. If you want to look over here, see all these monotubs? Those are all my mushroom containers, fruiting containers. For the listening audience that's familiar with cultivation, these are I have about a handful of monotubs on a rack, fruiting mushrooms right now.
Let me see if I can explain it for the listener.
There you go.
That's listening. Those are like the $10 storage plastic bins you get at like Walmart or Target.
Right, Home Depot is the go-to.
Yeah.
Unofficial
Home
sponsor.
Depot, whatever.
Yeah.
You kind of stackable storage things. I got a bunch of them at my place. And
You're off to a good start.
See-through plastic ones that are like a 64-gallon, I believe, 80-gallon maybe.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
They're like 3 feet by 2 feet by 1 foot, kind of cube storage things.
Right.
And it looks like you've made, when like babies are in the NICU where you have to put your hands through gloves to touch them.
All right.
Your hands. Well, it looks like there's 2 little hand socket
areas. There are air exchange holes with polyfill for the CO2 to escape.
I'm trying to paint a picture with my words, man.
Yeah, man. Break it down like a 5-year-old.
And then you're on a utility rack that I've made several times from Home Depot. It's chrome. It's $40. If you're a dad, you've definitely made this.
All right,
some point.
we're gonna
assembled it.
So that brings me to my next point. Notice I'm still using the same podcasting arm, which was a repurposed IKEA lamp. Which you, being the OG of podcasting and the one that kind of just coerced me to do this in the first place, you got the setup going for me. So this hack job, this is you.
Yeah.
Listening audience, you can't see it, but it's a hack job.
And I couldn't even get our own equipment. If you're watching this, I've got it in front of me. I'm going to make it look like I'm using it, but I couldn't do it without my producer co-host.
Would that be Eric?
Eric Redinger doing it for me, and he walked out of the room thinking I had it, and I was like, I don't got this.
Dude, I love your setup. Like looking for the listening audience. Again, we don't have a visual version of this podcast yet, but Law, my buddy Law, who's our guest today. He has a very official podcast-looking studio with like those foam pads in the back, and then there's this. His podcast is called Sweat Equity, and there's some sort of billboard, Miami Vice, Halloween Fiesta, something back there. I'm not sure.
We like to call it a homoerotic 80s novella kind of style.
You've nailed it, my friend.
Think of Miami Vice as super gay. That's kind of how our branding looks.
Magic Mike meets Miami Vice.
That's what happens when you don't have a brand strategy meeting with your partner beforehand. And we tried to take we actually tried to do like 3 years ago, tried to do like the level up thing of like, all right, we're taking this a little bit more seriously. Let's get professional photos done, headshot style. And Eric this is what, like, you time it out ahead of time. This is why, like, you see these guys that, like, Christian Bale yelling at people or Tom Cruise yelling at people on set. Like,
Yeah.
I totally get it. Because it's the thing of, like, you failed a lot in this way before, and you're supposed to test out stuff before you get to things.
Right.
And so, like, you do a mic check before you're a band that goes on. Otherwise, it's probably going to suck that night.
Well, I mean, the measure twice, cut once philosophy is great, but I've talked about it on this podcast. I measure 0 times and cut 1,000 in a row. So, I mean, I'm with you there. Like, the preparatory stuff is tough. It's tough.
And how many times do you do that before you get that instilled in you that you become that person that is kind of a dick? I always say, like, managers, your manager or your boss, it wasn't always probably a dick. They've seen you fuck up so many times that they become more of a dick, or people before you in that position.
You should always blame yourself if your boss is a dick. That's what you're saying.
You should definitely internalize first. That's something a lot of us don't do.
Wait, dude, tell me about your podcast. Tell the listening audience about your podcast, Sweat Equity, because again, you being kind of the person that got me into this whole genre of hobby, and you've got a lot to say. So, what is Sweat Equity? So
it's the #1 business comedy podcast out there, because there doesn't exist one in the business / comedy space.
Wow.
It is
quite the accolade.
We won one of those fake trophy awards. You know how they try to sell you trophies in the business world, professional world, your LinkedIn kind of community. If you own a business, you're going to get sent a bunch of stuff. Like, you won this Best of Tampa award. I've won the best management consultant of Tampa. It's called the Best of Tampa award. I won it 2018, 2019. I didn't get it 2020. It's a trophy scam. They try to get you to buy a trophy for $200.
Hey, it looks fucking good on Angie's List, I'll tell you that.
Well,
you throw a plaque up there or some sort of blue ribbon?
I took it and I go, well, I won the award. I don't need the physical award. They want to sell you a physical trophy. That's the scam. They made up an award to make you buy a trophy that costs them $12 to make and ship, that they'll sell you for $250 because people go, I need that award on our mantle when people walk in our office or building. And if I was bigger, I'd probably do something about it, but I'd probably buy it. But I just put it online as I already won this.
Well, dude, the physical trophy, I mean, don't discount the physical trophy. As somebody that never played sports as a kid, never really had any reason to receive a trophy, a participation trophy is fine by me. Like, that would be my only outfit. I'd wear it everywhere. So if you give me a trophy, I'm taking it. I'm displaying it proudly. I
respectfully disagree. When everybody wins, everybody loses. So our podcast is, I was tired of all these business podcasts I listen to that don't actually give good advice. And in a pragmatic way, it's a lot of motivation stuff, and motivation's temporary. And so I was like, let's start one that's part, like, here's some stuff I've learned from other people doing when I started my agency.
Lessons learned from the field.
Yeah. Here's all the stuff I'll fuck up on. Here's entrepreneurship as I'm going through it. And here I learned from people that are smarter than I am. That's kind of how I've always tried to be. And then we have guests on and, learn through them. How did they mess up? What we had a guy on recently that was telling us about, everybody talks about outsourcing, but he made a company in the pandemic. He made a company and went to the Philippines to outsource, not for the grunt labor like we think about, like, I need a web developer, I need a development team. He got middle management. He got an exec team in the Philippines. And
were they managing a team that was also in the Philippines, offshore?
Right.
Okay.
But, well, at any rate, we talked about, like, you have to unhinge that imprinted thing in your head where it's like the Philippines or India might not just be for that anymore. They've been doing that grunt work for so long. There's definitely got to be executives you can hire there.
Sure. I
You
mean,
know,
there's
he built
education there. They're connected to everybody the same way we are. So
right, and then he broke down the Philippines is better because their English is usually a lot better than the other countries that claim to have that can speak English and do this kind of outsource work, and they're hungry for whatever reason. That country has fostered this more of an entrepreneurial thing in the digital realm. So stuff like that. And this guy hit us up. He hit us up via a LinkedIn. I get 10 LinkedIn messages a day that are trying to sell me something. And it's one of those things where he hit me with a bot, one of those LinkedIn bots that's
you could tell it was auto-generated.
right. And so what I do to all these people that send me a bot, I tell them to listen to Sweat Equity. I go, hey, could you do me a favor? I'll definitely listen to your pitch.
Ooh, I
if
like
you
that.
go subscribe, rate, review our podcast. And then he was saying, can I come on to be a guest? And I said, I just asked him, what episode was your favorite?
Just to hold him accountable, make sure he was legit.
Right. And look, he may not have listened to the whole episode. He may just looked at the title, but he sent me something back about when we did about customer service and how you can really separate yourself apart. And then like the guy from Zappos did.
Yeah.
He basically took this e-commerce company, but really emphasized the customer service aspect.
Sweet.
And they became players where Amazon would have probably taken them out.
Oh, I mean, they're as far as
that.
shoes go, that is their Amazon.
They got that market cornered.
Yeah.
Why don't you buy shoes on Amazon? I mean, to me, that's what tells you that they crushed it there. So shit like that, where like you have these random, and we try to keep it quick. We try to keep them 33-minute episodes.
Good. And I've been trying to do that with this as well. Like the multi-hour Joe Rogan style podcast, they wear thin after a while. So I'm not interesting enough to fill 3 hours. Basically, that's what it boils down to.
Well, the third hour's when the stuff gets really good.
That's true.
It's when people let their guard down a lot of the time. That's
Dave Chappelle's 8th hour at the Comedy Store. That's when he's really getting into his good material.
Yeah, I don't know if I can sit through that. The 3-hour podcast I dig a lot of the time because some of the stuff is so nuanced that he has on with scientists and whatnot. Sometimes it takes a while to really communicate out what they're talking about and really flesh it out. Some other people, you're trying to see if they're full of shit or not, which I think is interesting. Well,
Rogan is the shit detector, man. No shit slides by Joe Rogan. I love his objective way of interviewing. It's amazing.
Yeah, but I think that has its own place. A podcast like ours trying to be around 33 minutes, I think that has its place too.
Yeah.
I mean, I would rather ideally, I'd love to be able to interview one person 5 days a week or 4 days a week or something for ours and have that be the show and record them all in 1 hour, 1 3-hour block at some point. But
anyways, so this, thanks for being on my podcast. I don't think I've ever been on Sweat Equity. I was on the other product. Have I? Well, you guys have rebranded about 8,000 or 9,000 times. So there was the Tokabaga.
It's still Sweat Equity, man.
Okay.
It's been Sweat Equity the whole time.
So that's me. That's on me, just not paying attention. But so I've been on Sweat Equity. I was also on your college football triple option podcast. Is that still going?
No, RIP, man.
RIP.
It's kind of that thing of if it wasn't making money and it wasn't making super happy.
Yeah.
It was kind of hard to do because I had 2 business attorneys as co-hosts, so it was really hard for us to meet up. And after a while, the pandemic really
COVID for sure.
Cut that.
Yeah. I mean, we can blame a lot on COVID. Cool. So now you're on my fucking podcast, which you've been on you were on the Frightened Ear when I did that in Tampa, my MMA comedy podcast. But this is my rebranding of self in Denver. So thanks for being on the MUstaSH Room. When we did comedy together, I remember you always asked me whenever I did a new bit, you'd be like, what the fuck are you trying to say? Like, what does this boil down to? What are you trying to say? So I've been trying to really hone in on that with this podcast, not just be tangent based and with, too much frivolous content, really trying to have some sort of central focus. So, we've been talking about mushrooms, both in cultivation, in psychedelic consumption, the way that it's influencing society's hold on the industry. So, that's kind of the space that we've been operating in. But, I know you as a seasoned comedian have dabbled in the space somewhat. And I guess I wanted to get your perspective as a friend and like as a comic, like the mental space, and like if there's any kind of overlap with psychedelics or any mushroom experiences that you've had.
Yeah. So in a lot of ways, I mean, look, let's take comedy and just put that under entrepreneurship, because it really is a lot of similarities. That's why I should have really answered your question about my podcast as kind of that, because being a comedian is being entrepreneurial, except your jokes are your commodity.
Right. To market yourself and all that shit.
Yeah. And doing your own podcast is in that realm too, because you're building a brand. It's not tangible, but you want to make this kind of infotainment kind of category where I hate mashing that word up and using it, but it's the most concise way of kind of explaining, like, you want this to be entertaining. You want the information about this sector to get out.
Yeah. What was KRS-One said? Edutainment.
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 I don't have the bars he's got, but
no, neither do I.
But I would say, mentally, it's all about mental game. It's all about like being an entrepreneur, being an artist, and trying to be professional, or trying to have a podcast get to a level where it is not a hobby, and more of something that is a revenue generating thing for you. Whatever it is, it's all mental discipline, and it's all getting out of for me, is a lot of getting out of my own way, stop overthinking a lot of stuff.
Sure.
And I told you a little bit like last week when we were talking about doing this, and I told you before that, like, I was really depressed going into becoming divorced and, dealing with that pre-separation for my ex-wife.
R.I.P. marriage, by the way.
Yeah, it's all good. I'll give you a very shrooms way of looking at it in a second. But what I try to do is, when I have my own company, once every 3 months or so, I would try to do a shrooms night with you and some other guys.
Yeah.
But I never I take like a half of what y'all did. So like, I'm a wuss with this stuff.
Never the hero dose.
Yeah. I'm not there yet. And I never wanted to go like full bore into that. I just wanted to giggle for 2 hours, and then I get the best sleep I'll ever have that night.
Which is awesome. You can't discount that motive at all.
Oh yeah. Especially when in a time, probably 2017, 2018, I wasn't sleeping well at all because I had 2 kids, both babies, and like running a business and having a marriage that was failing, and, just stressing all the time. And I sleep like Anne Frank already. So I just assumed she didn't sleep well. And so like, we would do those like once a quarter of the year, and it'd be like hitting the reset button on a Nintendo. Very much like wiping all the bad RAM out of your computer, whatever metaphor you want to make. It wiped it out. And for a night, I mean, for 2 hours, you can't help but giggle ear to ear. And who wouldn't want to do that?
Right.
And so it's one of those things where like, you hear of that weird stuff like laugh therapy and stuff. Well, that's kind of what this was for me. And then I'd sleep 8 hours straight through the night, not waking up, not tossing and turning. I'd feel great when I woke up.
Dude, I was able to perform an appendectomy at age 14. I think I can handle a couple mushrooms.
Isn't that just a TV show?
Jesus Christ! Did you see that unicorn? Its horn was so shiny.
I have requested of you many times that you share with me your experience with your heroic dose. And so thanks for taking that time out. I can't wait to hear about it, man. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. It's great to see you, by the way.
Absolutely.
Kind of planned it out for a couple of days. About a week ahead of time, kind of decided it was time to do it. I had recently gone through some job shifts and had a little bit more free time on my hand, and was kind of figuring out what the next chapter professionally was going to be.
Yeah.
So decided it was a good time to try my first heroic dose.
And for people that are listening, the heroic dose is approximately how much?
So they usually say it's between like anywhere north of 5 grams.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too.
And of course, as you know, different mushrooms have different potencies. These were golden teachers, so pretty standard, pretty common. Everybody has probably sampled those if they've sampled the the wares of the mushroom world. So
Yeah, we don't want to discount Golden Teacher. I mean, they're fantastic. They're the gold standard. Don't want to downplay the teachers.
Absolutely not. So it was just kind of looking for, didn't really have any specific expectations going in.
Okay, good.
I know a lot of folks go through and kind of set a specific intention and spend a lot of time working on that. And so the morning that I anticipated taking the dose, I went skinning or backcountry skiing with my dog for 3 hours or so, and just spent some time in the quiet, nobody around except for me and my dog, in the cold, working up a sweat, skinning uphill, skiing downhill, and trying to figure out really what I was trying to get out of it. Because as I mentioned before, right, there was a little bit of flux in my life.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't quite sure exactly what my intention was going to be.
Which is okay. Sometimes that's the best way to go in.
Absolutely. And, I thought perhaps there would be some childhood things that would come up,
trauma
and some childhood emotions. I thought maybe there would be some of those emotions tied to some of the job decisions that I had been making and stuff like that. So I thought a lot about those things. So though I didn't set a specific intention, I did kind of take the time to think through a lot of that.
Good. So kind of in an indirect way, you were creating your mindset, which I think is a perfect strategy.
Absolutely. And for me, the way to do that's in nature, obviously. So, and working hard. So, so skinning up the hill was a great way to do it. Rode home in silence and just kind of tried to think of some mantras, tried to really get my mind into a place where I was ready to go.
Good.
And got home, and decided to go with around 6 grams.
Which is extremely heroic. Yeah,
It was,
5 grams is 5 grams is like the floor. So 6, man, good for you.
It was fabulous. I know a lot of people get tummy issues. David, do you ever have tummy issues with mushrooms at all?
Every once in a while, I'll get a little uneasy. Never thrown up. Never was close to throwing up. I've done a better job as I've taken more of them and gotten a little bit more mature with the process. I fast. We talked about fasting. I talked about activating it with lemon juice. So maybe some of those preparatory techniques have helped avert the stomach issues. But like I said, it just mild discomfort really is all I've ever had.
I was a little nervous taking that much. I've never had any. I've always had kind of an iron stomach, but just in case, I took your advice with a little bit of lemon juice and some chamomile tea and a little honey. And I blended the mushrooms up with all of that. Instead of actually making the tea where you let the mushrooms steep, I just blended up the mushrooms till they were powder, poured it in the tea.
And that's Felix. Felix was big on the honey lemon mixture as well. So yeah, that seems to be a good recipe.
It's just so nice on your tummy, And that chamomile brings a nice calm over you right before you dive in.
Just like nature's blanket.
Exactly. Then I cooked a big breakfast and sat down to eat it. And 10 minutes in, after drinking those 6 grams, I started to feel kind of the sensation on the skin. For me,
the tingle. When
it sets in, it feels like I warmed up. Like I had just I'm on a treadmill and my body finally breaks a sweat or gets to that warmed up stage.
Okay.
So I started to feel that and quickly decided to move to the bedroom that I had set up for the experience, which was great. That morning we took a bunch of plants and a bunch of nature photos and some paintings that we had done and placed them all around the room so that I'd have a lot to look at, have a really safe, calm environment. There's a window in the room, so I had light if I wanted it, but I could close it if I didn't want it. Really comfortable bed and a whole lot of pillows.
Wait, let me ask you real quick. You said you ate breakfast right after you ate the mushrooms?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Interesting. I've never tried that.
And that's what my girlfriend did the day after when she did her dose.
Okay.
And she has more tummy issues than I did, and she didn't have any.
Interesting. Okay.
Not sure if that's a tried and true method or not.
Yeah.
It may for most people come right back up, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious when you do it again, if you don't eat afterwards, if there's any sort of variance in the effect or anything at all. Interesting. Okay, keep going.
Sure. So the room was nice and set up, and I had selected a few playlists on Spotify.
Okay.
Made sure my phone was in a place where it was easily accessible without, going too crazy. And I just laid down in the bed and put some headphones on and put on some really kind of triumphant classical music.
Yeah.
David, have you read Atlas Shrugged?
No.
It's a book by Ayn Rand
Okay.
about objectivism, right? Like finding that an individual's personal, like humans are heroic,
Okay.
and they're the best you can do for yourself is to strive to be productive for society and work really hard to be productive for society, which was what I was needing, right? Going through some job changes
Sure.
and things. I just wanted that kind of real triumphant, productive type of music. And laid down in bed and watched the popcorn ceiling in my room slowly become a mandala that started to rotate around the light fixture that was at the center of the room. And
was it going like in
like
concert with the music?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that.
Absolutely. Spinning both directions, you know, one ring would go one way, the other ring would go the other way. They were moving. And I would say it was less than 20 minutes after taking the dose, I finally visually was so stimulated that I put an eye mask on and laid down. And instantaneously, I was strapped to the front of a rocket and just blasted through the galaxy. Just fantastic.
Sure. How long did that last, would you say?
So that portion of the trip lasted about an hour and a half.
Okay.
But there were lots of stages of that. So at first, it was just strapped to the front of a rocket going 1,000,000 miles an hour through this kind of tunnel that was red and black checkered on all sides.
Okay.
And geometric shapes and patterns would pop up kind of in my periphery and spin around and move, and then I'd go down a different tunnel and
lots of fractals
and it was
stuff.
It was unreal. The music became more of an emotional wave as opposed to actual like sounds and music. It was like it was part of what was going on. And for about an hour and a half, I was entirely just out there, right? Eye mask on, rocking out to some incredibly triumphant classical music, lots of strings, lots of brass, just like, which was a ton of fun.
So all your senses were kind of working in concert with the music. Oh, that is, for me, that, and I'll let you get back to it in a second, but yeah, for me, when I did my ayahuasca experience, when I have good psilocybin experiences, all my senses kind of get together like a SEAL team and just work in a beautiful symphony. And so I can just visualize like what you're going through or what I can be there with you in this experience.
Sure. And to your point, all the senses were engaged, right? Like the bed started to kind of fold around me, the textures of the different pillows and blankets I had. And as I was going through that kind of galaxy, essentially, it started with the geometric shapes, and then it became more of a kind of purples and blues and red galaxy. Stars everywhere. And I found that things that were going on externally that made it into my ears, or things that were going on externally that made it to, my eyes, kind of got incorporated into what was going on. So for instance, there was a moment in the music, and, I wish I remembered the exact song or the composer for it. But the sun had just come through the window, just right through the blinds, and was shining right on my face. And so I took my eye mask off and had this incredibly profound feeling experience of just being washed over with love and support, and kind of a feeling of calm and confidence. I can understand at that point why a lot of people find why mushrooms and other psychedelics have been a part of a lot of religious experiences, because it's very easy to have that experience and quantify that as God.
Yeah, because you can't articulate it any other way. I mean, how can you explain the sun becoming like a blanket over you, basically encompassing you with nature? I mean, there's no way to really put that into actual words.
Absolutely. And I mean, just the feeling of unity, the feeling of oneness, and the feeling of understanding at that moment. I remember physically reaching out towards the light. I know I was weeping because my eyes were just soaked.
Sure.
And just having this moment of just profound love and compassion, which was phenomenal.
Awesome. And for people that are listening, one of the biggest features, benefits of psychedelics, mushrooms specifically, is just your oneness with nature. So, whenever my eyes light up and my voice tone changes when I hear people talking about nature during their psilocybin experience, it's because it's so profound, and it's almost like you are in the movie Avatar and you're becoming one with the tree and the earth. I mean, it feels like that. And
Absolutely.
so for anybody to trivialize nature after having a psilocybin experience, I mean, it just seems implausible. You just feel much more connected. So that's, to me, when I hear stuff like that, it hits home, because those are some of the most inspiring elements of the psilocybin trips.
I couldn't agree more. That moment during the trip that absolutely stood out. I mean, there were many moments of kind of feeling compassion and having, the external elements kind of play a role in what was going on. But for about that first hour and a half, it was a lot of that, just a lot of kind of flowing with the music. The music became emotion, and then it expressed itself visually. And I don't know how else to describe it.
Sure.
I mean, there were moments where I felt like, moving with the music, and probably would have been hilarious for my girlfriend to walk in at that moment when I'm like writhing in the sheets and just enjoying life. And
so let's with the therapeutic aspect. So, I mean, obviously the euphoria is amazing, like the oneness with nature, crying, just spilling all kinds of stuff out of you, and it feels right. But I guess after the fact, looking back from a therapeutic standpoint, how did that stuff really translate to or how were you able to internalize that after the fact, walking away from the experience?
Well, I think after about that first hour and a half, I came to the point where I was no longer strapped to the front of a rocket ship.
Okay.
My senses were close enough back to normal, but I was still very much engaged in the trip.
Sure.
And so for about the next hour and a half, my energy was incredibly depleted, but I was able to spend that time I shifted the music to a bit more calm music, where my mind had more room to generate its own thoughts.
Okay. And
kind of got to sit and marinate on the feeling of connection, the feeling of determination, the feeling of compassion. And so it was for an hour and a half, it was very much just kind of coming down, calming, and internalizing what I had just been through, trying to come to terms with the experience with the sun.
Sure.
Growing up profoundly religious and then steering significantly away from religion in the later part of my life, it was a unique experience to kind of see where potentially religion came from, and to understand that maybe that oneness, maybe that love, maybe that heaven that people talk about is the connections that you have with people and what you do here on earth and how you're able to share that compassion. So
yeah, don't attach it to one figurehead necessarily. It's much more broad than that. Yeah. Wow.
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned crying too, and for those of you that haven't had a psilocybin experience, there's a lot of yawning and a lot of crying.
A lot of yawning.
And you cannot stop it, but it's great. I mean, it's good crying. Tears just kind of run out of your eyes regardless of whether you want them to or not. But when you mentioned crying, I didn't want anybody to think that you were sad. It's just a byproduct of the experience.
Absolutely. It definitely felt joyful and emotional, as opposed to, upset or sad.
Yeah. So you had an hour and a half of just intense blast off. And then you mentioned that you were drained energy-wise, which it is draining, man. Your serotonin levels are adjusted and the receptors are engaged. I mean, it definitely takes it out of you both mentally and physically. So that makes sense. So you said that lasted about an hour and a half, and you were kind of started to reflect a little bit, started to get a little bit more introspective?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I wasn't in a place where I wanted to go, back into the world and go to, Starbucks and get a coffee and start talking to people. I was very much in a place where I just kind of wanted to sit, lay, internalize. I spent some time looking out the window at nature, ended up walking out to my deck for a little while, and really just spent that time being introspective and kind of trying to understand or trying to figure out how to apply what I had just felt to next steps for me.
Awesome, man. And did it feel organic? One of the things that I always like to know with others is, does it feel organic, the way these things came up and you were able to objectively look at them and deal with them? And did it feel like you had to really like struggle to bring those things out, or did they just organically pop up and you dealt with them as they came up?
The experience was incredibly organic.
Okay.
I did come away from it, and a few times during the trip, had thoughts to myself like, I'm not really uncovering something new about myself currently, or I'm not really addressing certain things that maybe I felt like I needed to address, from childhood or anything like that. So since it was my first time, there were lots of those kind of, I don't want to call them insecurities, but maybe insecurities like, should I be focusing on this or should I just let it go?
Yeah.
And for this trip, my intention once it started was to just let it go and just ride what happened and not really try to guide it.
Yeah. That's perfect. I
Yeah.
think and yeah, having it being your first macro dose or your first heroic dose, you can't expect it to just be all encompassing in your fix. So having the apprehension going in, not having done that before, the anxiety, not really being able to kind of like have any idea what you're up against because there's no intimate experience. That's a lot to tackle your first time through. So just imagine like what you'll be able to tackle the next time, knowing that all that stuff is not a barrier to you getting into your quote unquote happy place.
Absolutely. And it also made me appreciate small doses of mushrooms because that feeling of connection, that feeling of compassion, that feeling of kind of understanding that we're all in this together, whether we're people or animals or whatever, right? Like it's weird, but you get that feeling anyways, even with just a little bit. And so now I appreciate that feeling a lot more because I feel like I have a deeper understanding.
Yeah. So like, I guess what, for the listening audience, and we'll try to keep this 20 minutes or so, this has been awesome.
Sure.
For the listening audience, what's your takeaway? Like if somebody is considering doing a heroic dose or maybe they have some stuff that they want to deal with, like what's your takeaway from it? And like, how would you recommend somebody approach the situation if they're even curious about it going forward?
I think most of the authors out there who write about it have it right.
Okay.
It's really a lot about, it is a drug or a mind altering substance, right? And so, as with any of those, you can't really control it. And so you have to, if you're plan on taking mushrooms in a high dose, you definitely want to take the time to really prepare, right? Understand that you're going to be, possibly blasting off on the front of a rocket ship for 3, 6, 7 hours.
As long as it takes.
And then the rest of that day, you are just drained. You've burned a lot of mental calories. You've burned almost all your serotonin. So it's really heavy, but I think that as long as it's approached understanding that you got to ride, quote unquote, the dragon, right? You can't try to wrangle it. Then it makes it a lot easier to let go. And when you do let go in that experience, even if you experience sad experiences or painful experiences, it's worth allowing your body and your mind to kind of work through that with the help of those chemicals. So, and
I like how you said you're just completely drained afterwards. That lasts, like for me, sometimes that'll last a couple days. Not in its entirety, but it weans off sometimes slowly. So carving out a little bit of extra padding in your schedule to make sure that you're not going into a super important board meeting or you're not, entertaining some huge life decision or something. Yeah, making sure you have that buffer, I think, is a good thing for newbies as well.
Absolutely. I mean, when I came out of it, I just kind of wanted to not do much. I wanted to eat. I was finally hungry after maybe 6 or 7 hours after I took it.
Yeah.
I kind of spent half an hour just lying on the bed with my girlfriend in my arms, and we just laid there and both listened to the music together. It was fantastic. And then we had the opportunity to kind of talk about it and address some of the things that came up emotionally and
Awesome. Dude, thank you for taking the time to share that. One quick thing, how's your cultivation coming along? I want to get a quick update from you before I let you go.
So I had 2 grain jars. One of them still hasn't fully populated.
Okay.
But I'm pretty close to just saying, let's go ahead and use it because it started to, and this is kind of neat, the inside the grain jar has started to shrink. So it's basically eating and eating and eating, and it's pulled itself off the walls now. And so I think
That cake is
not
that
really
cake is probably ready to go. Yeah, if it's starting
Absolutely.
if the mycelium's shrinking a little bit, I would say even if there's like a little bit of grain that's scattered around it that's not fully colonized, take what you have for sure and work with it because it'll start to dry up a little
Absolutely.
bit. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I have two. I took that one jar and split it between two large Tupperwares for fruiting chambers.
Yeah.
And so it's going to take a little bit longer to fully populate the substrate, the bolt casing. But I checked it today, and I've got little patches of the mycelia that have reached the top in both of
Beautiful.
them.
Such a
so
good
I
feeling
think
when you
it'll
see
be
that.
another. Oh yeah, I'll take some pictures.
Hell yeah.
So I think it'll be another couple weeks before it fully populates enough, and then I'll pull the aluminum foil off the top, and we'll be starting to fruit.
Fantastic. Dude, thank you so much for being on. We will have you back on as a full guest. We'll schmooze again soon, but it's good seeing your face.
Appreciate you, David. Good to see you, brother.
Talk to you later. Man.
Sounds like a good time to interrupt and provide you with a health segment from Wifey Jill. Here we go.
Thanks for being here, Boo. Booette.
Thanks. I'm excited to talk about this one. It's probably my favorite mushroom out there.
Yeah, I remember eating this particular mushroom and being like, this is a freaking awesome,
I mean, I did
delicious
not
mushroom.
want to share this. It was so good.
Understood. And now you're pregnant, so you don't have to share anything ever again as long as you're carrying our child.
I have that on tape.
And I gave away the name of the mushroom. Tell us the name of the mushroom.
It is mitaki.
Mitaki.
Which, funny enough, means dancing mushroom in Japanese.
I haven't seen one dance. Maybe an animated version of a
dances in my
mitaki.
mouth.
Ooh. And we can go naughty again if we need to with that one, but all right.
Yeah, so I guess I got that name after people danced with happiness upon finding it in the wild. And also for its incredible healing properties.
So not only is it delicious, like other mushrooms, but it also has medicinal properties.
Yeah, so this mushroom is a type of adaptogen, which adaptogens assist in the body in fighting against any type of mental or physical difficulties.
Okay.
So like it'll regulate systems that have become unbalanced. When we spoke about that apothecary, they had those adaptogen drinks
At in Santa Fe?
Yeah,
That place was rad.
that place is so good.
Yeah.
But
So
yes,
adaptogens are all natural, right?
all natural. These are found in nature.
Okay.
And they assist, regulating stress levels and secreting the hormones that just kind of balance you out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All natural. You sold me there.
Yeah. So for this one, we bought it at a farmer's market.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how would you describe it? It's like grows in a cluster. It grows off wood.
Yeah. Well, so the chicken of the woods. So this one's called the hen of the woods. The
Yeah, so
mitaki.
mitaki is hen of the woods.
Yeah. There's another mushroom, chicken of the woods. I can't pronounce its name, but it's known as chicken of the woods. These two mushrooms, much like shiitake and some of the other gourmet mushrooms, they grow in wood. So it's usually a down tree or something in the woods where it's within a certain period. I think it's a few weeks is optimally where the mushroom would start to take hold of the tree or take hold of the wood. If you were doing it at home, if you were home cultivating, you would take like an oak tree within 3 weeks of being cut down, and you would put plugs containing mycelium or liquid culture or something that contains the basis for the mushroom, and actually plug it into the wood. And then you seal it off with beeswax. And so essentially what I'm getting at is this mushroom requires wood to grow. It's not one where you can grow it on rye grain or spawn or anything like that. It has to grow out of wood.
Wood.
Again, naughty. These podcasts are getting naughtier and naughtier.
I mean, our brains are in the gutter.
Yeah. You are in the second trimester, so the hormones are flowing in the mustache room.
They are. And I noticed not just oak, but also elm and maple. It does work in those as well.
Okay, cool.
And in the autumn months is, so in fall, kind of right before the weather changes, is when they're kind of plentiful and you could forage for them.
Yeah, supposedly, and again, I don't have any direct experience, but supposedly they only grow like every 6 months or, once a year. You really don't get the yields that you would with some of the other mushrooms.
It's such a shame because these are so
Yeah.
good. You guys have to eat them. Yeah. These are fat-free, low sodium, low calorie, cholesterol-free mushrooms. When we got them, so they kind of grow in a cluster. So leave them as in that cluster.
What do you mean by that?
So, what would you kind of like? They almost look like lettuce leaves
Yeah.
in the way that they kind of sprout up. So instead of breaking them into small pieces to throw in the oven and roast, because that's what we did, we drizzled it with some olive oil, salt and pepper. That was it.
Yeah,
and it
delicious.
was probably 400 degrees for 15, 20 minutes. But try to leave them intact. And they have this like butter flavor where when they're roasted, the butter taste just comes out without even adding butter.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, it's just natural stuff. So to know that you have all these different flavor palettes in nature just available, maybe a little expensive. Like I said, these are gourmet mushrooms, but it's a nice alternative to the same pork or chicken or whatever meat you're using on a daily basis.
Yeah, so I would say as far as purchasing these, they probably won't be in your local grocery store, but if there's like a Japanese grocery store or like a specialty grocery store, you might have more luck finding them there. But these mushrooms are rich in antioxidants, vitamins B and C, copper, potassium, of course, fiber, minerals, and amino acids. And something else I wanted to highlight was beta-glucans.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, so they are a form of soluble dietary fiber. So they're strongly linked to improving your cholesterol levels and boosting your heart health.
Okay.
So this is beta-glucans are typically in whole grains, oats, bran, wheat, but you'll also find these with the mitakis.
Cool.
So
And
they'll keep you full too.
yeah, and you mentioned Japan and or Japanese markets. The Far East has been keen on mushrooms for
They have.
their medicinal and just their taste, their flavor qualities for so long. It's amazing that as in the U.S. we really haven't embraced all facets of mushrooms up until recently. Paul Stamets, I mean, that dude is just he's moving mountains, and the mountains are they still need a lot of moving.
Yeah. So we need to definitely check out that Japanese grocery store downtown. It's like a mile and a half away, and just see all the mushrooms that they have.
I'm down. So anything else we should know about the mitaki, aka hen of the woods?
So let's see. We did kind of talk about most of them, but definitely you can add them to stir fries. You can roast them whole. You can add them to omelets, soups. You can top pizzas with them. They can be useful in treating cold and flu viruses as well. So if you're sick, load up on some mushrooms.
Yeah, just like rub some mushrooms on your kid's forehead and boom, the cold is gone. Oh, you have to consume them, right? It's
wouldn't you want the taste?
It's not a topical solution. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know
Just
what
to
mushrooms are
clarify.
topical on. So yeah,
Cool.
I definitely recommend this one for all your listeners out there.
Well, thank you very much for another amazingly educational session. We will continue to learn from you, Wifey Jill.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Walk with me, baby, come on and talk with me, come on and take me downtown. Well, walk with me, baby, come on and talk with me, come on and take me downtown. Well, walk with